the first thing that I want to do is I want to show you something that is coming, and I'd love to get some feedback. This is on our development server. You can see it says Storytell-development. So this is not yet in production, but this is coming in the next couple of days. And a couple things about this. So this is a collection. And Bears, do you see how this is purple here?
Yes.
That's because I have mentioned a specific file. So I am asking Storytell to respond only from the data that's in a specific file. This is in production, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but basically now you can mention files and collections. But the thing that I want to show you that's not yet in prod, and Francie, can you see my screen? I know that you're not on video, but are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
You can see that there are some new sections here. So it says, hey, Johnson.
Hello.
It says reasoning, gotchas, answer, and then it says consider. And so these new sections are added to the answer. So it used to be that we would just show you the answer. But now you can open up these sections where we're telling you how we're getting to the answer. So what is the reasoning that Storytell is doing? So we're going to analyze the documents. We're going to aggregate it into a summary. Gotchas are ways that the answer might not be as good as you want it to be. So for example, the reference material contains transcripts of the meeting. We can only provide insights based on the content of these records. It might not represent the full scope of the usage. Then we provide you the answer. And then below it, additional things that you might want to consider. You might want to consider analyzing the sentiment of these meetings, or here's an additional insight, or have you thought about this? So I'd love to know, what do you think about this? Because we're about to push this out to production. Is this valuable? Is it helpful? Do you want it to work in certain ways? Do you like how it's showing? Who's got an opinion?
So Jordy, I like it. I think it's useful. I just worry that the pages with all of this, the page is going to get like very cluttered and too many buttons to click.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions about that. So we've made these sections expandable and collapsible.
Yep.
And they should stay expanded or collapsed. So if you want them always open, you can. If you want them always closed, you can. We're also thinking about putting them below the answer. So you get the answer first, and then you get like the sections below that you can open. Do you have a preference about the ordering or other ways, Bears, to make it accessible but not cluttered?
I think below the answer.
Okay.
That's what I think, but
okay,
because I want to see the answer first, and then I can look at the reasoning and the options.
Yep. Okay.
But you know,
well, that's the same feedback that we got from others too, Bear. So it's very consistent. And Andy's jumped on, and Andy, I know that you've been working through this. In fact, Andy, do you have anything that you want to display on your local machine that is different than this, or is this a good?
No, this is a good representation of
Jordy, it's almost like when we're doing decks, you know, at the very bottom, we put the source, we put the date. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Anyone else have any opinions about this?
I like how it encapsulates into things into a mini box that closes by itself, because when you're trying to use DeepSeek, for example, it gives you everything. It tells you why it's annoying as hell.
Yeah.
Well, here it's like, it's simple. If you want to see it, you can see it. If you don't want to see it, you don't have to. But then you understand the reasoning behind it, and you can prompt it better possibly as well.
Great. This specifically to that point, the consider section at the bottom. So it's telling you maybe some things that you might want to try doing. Do you want these to be clickable where you can just turn them into prompts and ask the questions, kind of like the suggested prompts that we have? Or is there anything about this in terms of making it more actionable that you'd like? Or is it good as is? Give you all a second to think through it. Let me know.
I think prompts because if you're giving them something to consider
Yeah.
and they want to do it in that moment, it might be a prompt for them or something to save.
Andy, do you have any thoughts about the best way technically to make it actionable based on what Johnson's saying?
Could you repeat that, John? I'm not sure if I understood.
Johnson was saying yes to making it more actionable.
Mm-hmm.
So that could mean that you can click on it, kind of like the prompt suggestions.
Oh
And then
yeah, we do already have the suggestions. I wonder maybe if the suggestions that we do have should replace this consider section, in the sense that maybe they're too hidden right now, and we could have more actionable items right underneath them.
And then if you don't make it into prompts, that box that pops up when you highlight it, you can always say save that consideration maybe.
Oh, interesting.
Because you may
Yeah.
want to go back to that idea.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, so let me just run this again so we can see it run in real time. And let's see what we get back here. And so Johnson, you're saying this box here, you might want to right now you can copy it. Tell me a little bit more about what saving it would mean to you.
So if I'm working on this and then it says, well, you may want to consider this, but I don't want to consider it now.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can always come back to the content later on as you're working on it. But a lot of folks keeps on doing their work as they're going through one question after the next question, next question.
Yeah.
They may never get back to that feed.
Yep.
And then if they don't get back to that feed, they're gonna just put in an archive, eventually go back and search for the archive.
Do you want the ability to favorite or flag this or add it to a scratch pad, or what would it look like to kind of put a pin in it?
Maybe scratch pad because you may not use it, or you may want to use it and can delete it later on, I guess.
Yeah. That's a similar thing that Grant asked for, Andy. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was very similar, yeah.
Bear,
I have a question. What's a scratch pad?
let's imagine here. Let me just do this manually to kind of show you how it could look. So I'm going to pull up a effectively like a little scratch pad. So let me just do this real quick. And I'm going to try to put these next to each other. So give me a second here. This isn't going to be very helpful, but so Bears, I basically, let's imagine that there's a little button that says like, add this to my scratch pad. And so when you click that button, it basically kind of like puts it into a space. Like this is like a scratch pad. It wouldn't be this like black color, it'd just be like a kind of a scratch pad space. And then like a little bit later, you might say like, oh, I want to add this to my scratch pad too. You click a button and then it like adds that to your scratch pad. And then you're going through some other stuff and you're like, oh yeah, no, I really would like, all of this to be in my scratch pad. And you click a button and then like all this stuff gets added to this scratch pad. And then you've got this kind of like space where you've got just a bunch of text that you've added.
If you let me share my screen for a second, I think I have a better example of a scratchpad.
Okay.
This is from an app on my computer, but you could imagine it as like a floating window. Maybe it will be floating, but it would be like just kind of like a sticky where you can pin thoughts or things that you find useful. So like Jodio mentioned this, you'd click on a add to scratch pad and it would pop into here and it would just be a place to hold the ideas
Would
you
it
think are
save it
valuable.
like forever, or is it just to hold while in the process of this analysis?
Well, would you like it to be saved forever? How would you like to save it after you're done with it?
Like I wouldn't see, again, like I don't want to talk in behalf of Johnson or anyone else. Like for me, I wouldn't see why I would need it for that moment. Like if for me it would be something, okay, maybe this is something important that I would want to be able to go back to later on.
Mm-hmm.
But at that moment, I'm already looking at it. So I don't know why I would need it. But again, like I think this is totally different for people in different areas versus what I do.
Well, Berge, let me give you a couple potential use cases for it, and you can tell me if any of these are interesting. One use case would be, and let's imagine, I'm going to try to like annotate here. So this scratch pad could have a couple buttons. So one could be a button that says add to a collection as data. So you might want to take some of Storytell's answers and add it in as like source data to a collection to be able to use later. So it could be like add to collection. Another thing could be something like copy this whole, this whole scratch pad. It could also be, like save it to a document, save it to a Word doc, or email it to someone. And you can kind of like collect parts of Storytell answers and then, email the whole thing off. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way you explain it, yeah, I think that would be very useful, especially if we can save it and refer back to it, email it, add it to a document. But like what Andy was saying, just, like if I want it just for that one moment, okay, maybe I can email it to someone. But
Yeah,
to add it
exactly.
to a document, I would just copy and paste it, Jodio. Like wouldn't need it like that. But anyway, that's just me. Again, I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone else.
This is great. Thank you. So we have an existing ticket. This is for Lex and Andy. And I am going to add this to the existing ticket. It's Eng 837. I'm going to put this into backlog and then we can come back to it. Okay. Let me share my screen again for a second, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get everyone's feedback on what you had said. Sharing my screen here. Okay. So Andy, let's look at the difference between the prompt suggestions and the consider. So consider is like, you may want to consider analyzing the sentiment of the meeting, or here's an additional insight, or have you thought about identifying the frequency? So it's kind of like, hey, some things to consider. Prompt suggestions are similar, maybe a little bit different. You can see that they're different here. How do you as users feel about this versus this? Should this be collapsed into one thing?
So what Berg said about less is more, if it can collapse, then that'll be great for the user, I would guess. But right now they're kind of different unless you look at metrics, and KPI would be metrics then. So depends on the output of considerations and your suggestions is slightly different based on the content right now, but sometimes they may mesh to be the same. Now you may want to change that to less.
Okay, this is what I'm going to propose. Tell me if there's any objections here. Lex, can you make a ticket, grab a screenshot of this, and let's look at ways to bundle, consider, and prompt suggestions together in a way that encompasses basically here's what we think you might want to try doing next with this effectively. So it's like we'll figure out how to get it to be as actionable as possible and as relevant as possible. And it'll be clickable basically. So just like these are clickable, and then I can, just do it. This section would be clickable in the same way. Is that any objections there? Going once, going twice. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep us moving here. So thank you for that. So I'm going to go now to this sandbox that I have, which is a bunch of 10K. So we can see here that I've got a Zoom 10K, Walt Disney 10K, Viacom 10K, etc. And so Berge, I want to go a little bit deeper on this because I think this is going to be valuable for you and your team. So you could ask a question. Oh, and by the way, I also have a collection from Microsoft and Netflix. So I've got this corporate 10K collection where I've put a bunch of 10Ks, but I've got this sub collection where I could put a bunch more data. I haven't put a bunch more data in yet, but I could. And let's just imagine that I had more in here. What I want to show you is that you could say something like, tell me about how, and then I'm going to say and I start typing Zoom. And you can see that it's giving me a set of collections and assets that I can now reference, right? So this is in my corporate 10Ks collection. So I can say, tell me about how this one document is related to, and then I'm gonna start typing Microsoft. And now I'm gonna reference the collection. So I've got a file and a collection. This collection could have many files in it. And so the ability to scope the conversation to a file or a group of files using the @ symbol here is now in production. And Berge, I'm just curious to know if you've tried this. If you want to try it right now, I'd love to watch you try it, or just what you think about this.
I have not tried it. I mean, I think I guess I have to like try it to understand what it's going to do. I mean, I like the idea that you're able to talk to two different files.
Yep.
But I thought we could already do that. Like, I mean, so why do we need the hashtag and everything?
This is allowing you to kind of direct the energy to specific files or specific collections in a much more targeted way. And I think you're gonna be excited to hear about this. We are going to update the Chrome extension. And
oh yes, that's one thing that drives me. Frodo, I use it every day.
Okay.
That to me is like a godsend, because
Awesome.
I'm reading now like 10, 20 articles in the industry in minutes, where it would take, I would avoid it because it was too long to read.
Okay, well, this is very exciting because Andy's going to be working on this soon. And I wanted to ask you a specific question about a piece of functionality that we're playing around with. Would you want the ability to highlight some content on a page that you're on and get a set of options like these? How valuable would that be for you?
I like it. I mean, I like it. What I do with what I have already is I use the built-in prompts, or I'll create my own prompt. I've never done like a specific highlighting of one section and said, give me more information, but I can see how useful that would be.
Okay. All right. And so you want the ability to send it to a collection right? So you could say, I want to send this to a specific collection. And then basically the ability to get like a summary